And whilst I understand it's also part of Amanda's story, she has been given the platforms to tell her story many times, and we have remained, mostly silent over the last decade. I think comedy show which has associated itself with such an individual traumatic case and an individual person does sort of, reference itself and associate itself with violence. And I don't think that giving a comedy platform is the right setting for that.
Now, the woman at the centre of one of the most famous murder cases of the last 20 years will perform a comedy show at the Edinburgh Fringe tonight, and the victim's family want it cancelled. Amanda Knox, who was convicted and then acquitted of the murder of Meredith Kercher in Italy in 2007, will be performing a stand-up show about her life. She was convicted of the murder of her 21-year-old roommate in Perugia before finally being acquitted in 2011 following a series of appeals. Now, the Kercher family want the show cancelled, and a petition at change.org has now been signed by more than 7,500 people. It says the show disrespects Meredith's memory and also risks normalising violence against women. This is what Amanda Knox said to Sky News yesterday.
I'm referencing how I was wrongly vilified in the murder of Meredith. But I also talk about the experience of trying to explain that to my daughter and how absurd that can be.
But in referencing that, do you not see that would be triggering to her family?
I mean, it would be, again, I can't speak to what is or is not triggering to Meredith's family. What I can say is that I've never seen the kind of scrutiny and criticism pointed towards a wrongly accused man that I've seen pointed towards me.
Now, Amanda Knox also posted on Instagram that her show, quote, honours Meredith Kercher's memory and calls out the violence that was done to her and to me, unquote. I'm joined now by Stephanie Kercher, who is Meredith's sister. Good afternoon to you, Stephanie.
Hi there.
And Sally Alington, a family friend who started the petition. Hello, Sally.
Hi, Aasmah.
Stephanie, to you first of all, I know you've been asked this question many, many times. Why do you not think that Amanda Knox, who was acquitted of the murder of your sister, why should she not be able to put on a show at the Edinburgh Fringe that says, honours Meredith Kercher's memory and calls out the violence that was done to her and to me?
I think that the main issue here is that there seems to be an ongoing theme of self-produced documentaries, books, and now a comedy show, which continually associate them with Meredith's name. It's obviously a very upsetting and traumatic experience for myself, our family, and all of her friends. And whilst I understand it's also part of Amanda's story, she has been given the platforms to tell her story many times, and we have remained, mostly silent over the last decade. I think comedy show which has associated itself with such an individual traumatic case and an individual person does sort of, reference itself and associate itself with violence. And I don't think that giving a comedy platform is the right setting for that.
She also said in one of the interviews that she thinks, I don't know how she would know this, but she says that, if Meredith would find this funny, as in her show.
That's kind of, the challenge here, that there's always the association with Meredith. If Amanda wants to go and do any piece of work, she obviously has that right, but it's the constant association with Meredith, which I find extremely upsetting. The description on the bio at Edinburgh Fringe does say it contains descriptions of violence. So whilst I haven't seen the show, which seems to be a slight criticism coming back at myself, it does say that on the bio there. It's got adult themes, it's obviously associated with the case, and it's not a generic theme here, which most comedy acts would do when they're pushing the boundary somewhere. This is about an individual person.
Yeah. And, I've only been speaking to you for a couple of minutes, and there is a lot of support for you, Stephanie. There's only a few people who have said, that actually why should she not be able to do this? But the overwhelming feeling from the messages that's coming in so far is that they agree with you. If her show, I mean, it doesn't look like it will be cancelled, but I can understand why you started the petition. Are you kind of comfortable with this idea of being being someone who is pushing for cancellation of, not someone, I suppose, but someone's show? In other words, a proponent of cancel culture in itself. Is that something you're comfortable with?
I think that there's a lot of different issues and challenges here. Obviously, everybody has the right to free speech, and there are no laws around, what comedy shows can and can't include. The challenge here is, as I already mentioned, the descriptions of violence and that sort of thing. And also, there is still a criminal conviction that's been upheld here. And I don't want to get into the ins and outs of guilt and innocence, because that isn't what this is about. But there is a slander conviction that she did serve 3 out of the 4 years for. So to say about wrongful imprisonment and how she's going to explain it to her daughter is quite a, inaccurate statement in itself. I think that, as with a lot of media, we can all share what we do and don't want to include. I don't think that I will be solely responsible for the cancellation of this show. The petition was started by a friend of the family, and it's generated over 8,000 signatures already. So there's obviously many people who are feeling the same here. It's not a generic theme, it is an individual case. And whilst I appreciate it's part of her story as well, she has had other platforms to already tell her story.
I'll come on to Sally in a second, but Stephanie, you mentioned there that there's been other kind of platforms that she has, Amanda Knox has used, and you said you kept largely quiet. When you first heard about a comedy, a stand-up show at the Edinburgh Fringe, well, first of all, when did you hear about that, and what was your initial reaction?
I heard about it because I was actually contacted by the media for a comment on it.
Right.
And I think this is why the individual association with Meredith in her name is hurtful and upsetting, and, sort of ignites that pain still. If it was to honour Meredith, then I think there would have been sort of different surrounding interviews maybe on her side, if that were the case initially. It is obviously painful and upsetting, and as you'll see on the comments on the petition, other people who may have gone through similar things, this is not something to be taken lightly. And whilst I understand that she said her show, contains themes of motherhood and she hasn't taken this lightly, it is still associated with a violent, traumatic individual case.
Yeah. I'll come back to you in a second. I want to speak to Sally now. Sally Alington, as I said, family friend who started the petition. Sally, how did the petition come about?
So Stephanie and I go way back. We used to work together along with Meredith. And I actually only became aware of this performance when Stephanie did a post on Facebook to friends, which was so heartfelt and so moving about the impact that this upcoming performance was going to have. And Stephanie rightly pointed out that the family have maintained this sort of dignified silence all the way through. And yet again, Stephanie was kind of keeping this within a closed group. And I said, well, can you allow some of your friends to feel the anger on your behalf, and let's see what public opinion is. So I started the petition a couple of days ago. It's had incredible traction. I think if you read the comments on that petition, people are in disbelief that something so distasteful, disrespectful could be allowed to go ahead. So that was the reason why it came about.
And it stands at, I mean, it's obviously going to keep changing. Is it about 7,500 at this point?
I think we're about 8,500. So I reckon we'll probably cross the 10,000 mark this afternoon. It's really ramped up in the last couple of days. I think as people are hearing about this show and it's becoming public knowledge that this is potentially going ahead, I think people are very keen to share their disgust at what's going on.
And yet it looks like it is going to go ahead, doesn't it? But is it still important for you to see those numbers going up?
Absolutely. I've actually just in the last half an hour filed a formal complaint to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. They have a Google's form that you can fill in. I'd written to them obviously already, but they had sort of washed their hands of it, saying we don't curate, we don't pick the artists, we just provide a platform. But if you do want to file a formal complaint, here's a Google form. So I have filled in that Google form saying I'm urging them to read every single one of the comments on the petition and tell me that they can put their hand on heart and say they're doing the right thing by letting this go ahead. There are people who have shared experiences of rape and murder who are equally triggered and traumatized. There are people who cannot believe what this says about, violence towards women in society. And there are people who just, that rightly so, say that this should not be, using Meredith's name to put this show on is not okay.
And are you expecting anyone to kind of protest peacefully, quietly outside the venue?
We haven't asked anybody to. If anybody does that, that's entirely their choice. That's not something that we've asked anybody to do. We're obviously asking people to put sort of pen to paper, if you like, put their, vote with their, words and numbers on the petition. But yeah, people obviously have the right to protest if they want to.
Stephanie, there are obviously clearly people who are going to go along tonight. Some of them might be listening. What would you say to them?
Well, they've obviously bought a ticket for a reason. I'm sure some of them are friends and family of Amanda herself. Others might be there for curiosity. Some will probably be media. Others may not even know what it's about. I think that once the show goes ahead, it is down to the individual person, it's individual taste. I haven't seen the show, as I have been quite clear about. It is more that it is associated with my sister's case rather than, a generic comedy show that she has chosen to pursue. And I would just urge anyone to watch it with, a kind heart, both on Amanda's part and ours. I haven't, as Sally said, we're not asking anyone to go there and protest on our behalf, or it's quite the opposite, against everything, she is entitled to do what she wants to. I just think that when you're choosing a platform to convey such a traumatic experience, whether it's her experience or my sister's experience, I think that when you're storytelling in that way, you have a responsibility to choose the right platform and to tell your experience that way.
And Stephanie, I'm trying to remember now, because this was 2007, which seems like an awfully long time ago, and I'm sure that time means different things to your family because of what happened. How old were you when Meredith was killed?
I was 24.
Okay, and how have you managed to keep her name, her memory alive in the intervening years? What kind of things have you done as a family?
Well, anyone that's lost anyone close to them, be it under normal circumstances or traumatic experiences, will know that they never leave your heart or your mind. And as a family, we've all dealt with it very differently. It is extremely, extremely difficult. For me, being her sister, I've got many of her things that I managed to keep from her room, things that we've got from growing up. Unfortunately, we didn't get many items back from her case in Italy, but I do have, obviously, all of our things from growing up, and now sort of more to the present day. I spend my time with my own family, my own children, and it's just about enjoying Meredith in a positive way and, putting out her legacy there through living a life that's true to myself.
Stephanie, thank you so much for talking to us. I know you've done a few interviews on this, and I appreciate it must be difficult, but thank you in any case. That is Stephanie Kercher. She is the sister of Meredith Kercher. And we also heard from Sally Alington, a family friend who started the petition. If you want to sign that petition, it is at change.org, and it is at about 8,500 signatures. Lots of you getting in touch about that. I'm going to read some of those out in a minute or so. I would say that overwhelmingly the support seems to be for the Kercher family.